Okay, so now this is the part that most people don't know. In today's world, there are 4 additional things that distort the energy around us, which is causing the illness. Of course, most of us by now, we know that cell phone has radiation and all the radiation from these Wi-Fi devices. That is one, yes. Second thing is something called dirty electricity. The third thing that happens is we use substances in our house, like we put the thermal insulation. We will use chemical things on the carpet so that we don't get fungus. All of those are emitting toxic chemicals into the environment, which creates something called VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. And our houses are so sealed, we never open doors and windows. All those toxic gases are inside. And that is creating lung issues and asthma. And we are breathing toxic air in this, it's like a sealed chemical cocoon. That is number 3. The fourth thing is something called earth grid. So that is something you might not have heard about. So today I'll just spend a few minutes explaining what the earth grids are, how they cause illness, and how we will be correcting all 4 of these. All of these other things, they are unseen, like the dirty electricity, the radiation, the VOCs. It may or may not directly affect the physical level, but it is affecting all these levels of us. So the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, it's distorting that. If that gets distorted, our aura gets distorted. And if the aura gets distorted, eventually we will have a physical condition or symptom. It will not happen in one day, but the more you stay, the deeper it goes. Typically, a house looks like this. You have a you have a Wi-Fi router. Your TV has Wi-Fi. You have the Ring doorbell. Slowly, there's continuous radiation and the entire house is covered with radiation. So there's no avoiding it. Now, the earth has natural or electromagnetic grid patterns. One of them is called the Hartman grid, and it flows north to south and east to west. Just like you have the longitude and latitude, you have these grid lines. They're about 1 to 3 inches wide. These are magnetic fields of the earth, and they're flowing north to south, east to west. And they're about 2 meters apart from each other, from center to center. So from the center of this line to the center, this is about 2 meters. Every third or so line, that line becomes very wide. So it's about 3 feet. Okay, so we call that a Benker zone. So this yellow grid, which is going north to south, east to west, is called the Hartman grid. And every third or fourth line, which is the wider one, is called the Benker grid or the Benker zone. Because we are now in an environment like this, which has so much radiation, the frequency of the radiation, because it's electromagnetic, this is the electromagnetic grid of the earth. The radiation comes onto this line, and this line starts transmitting it to the whole space. We are eating healthier, we have better nutrition, and we have better knowledge. But why are people sicker? It's because of these grids. Now, these small, if there's a fat grid line, for example, here, if there is this fat one and it's going right through your bed, when you're sleeping, it's like you're plugged into the electromagnetic radiation. You're plugged into this negative energy, especially if you are on this fat line. Maybe you're sleeping on that, like it's going through your bed. Or if you're sitting on the table where you sit, you're sitting on that fat line. That is when sickness comes in a person. And if there is a line where there's 2 fat ones crossing or 2 Benker lines crossing like this, for example, the person who's sleeping on this side of the bed. I recently went to somebody's house who was diagnosed recently with breast cancer. And where she was sleeping, at the exact point on the breast, there were 3 lines crossing. And that is the point of cancer in her body. So this is called the Hartman and the Benker grid line. This is something that you have to correct. Look at the 3-dimensional model. It is also going as horizontal plane. So if I look at the section of a house, I'll find those fat lines even in height. If I am to look at a house like this, it is actually a cube. So the grid of the earth is a cube like this. So the outer boundaries of the cube is the Benker, and those smaller ones is Hartman. So the ones that are the most dangerous is the boundaries of the cube. And you don't want to be sleeping, working on that line. This is kind of like, it's called the Benker and Hartman cube system. And this is the natural grid of the earth. The grid moves with the shape of the earth. So if there's a mountain, it's going to appropriately move on the earth. So in some places, you'll find that the lines are closer, and some places they are farther away. Now, there's a second grid of the earth, which is called a Curry grid. And this flows kind of 45 degrees to north, south, east, west. And it is the same thing. So you have thinner lines, and then every third or fourth line, it becomes very wide. This is called the curry zone. And again, crossing points of these is where danger happens. Now, the thing about the curry grid is the curry grid and the Wi-Fi in a person's house are directly related. So the curry lines used to be very, very small before. In any house or in any zone where there is a lot of cell phones or Wi-Fi or router and these devices, the curry lines expand and become very wide. In some places, I've even measured them like 5 to 6 feet wide, just because the EMFs are so much in that area. So if you superimpose all of this in anybody's house, you have this network of grid lines. You have the Hartman and the Benker, and you have the curry lines and the curry zone. So if you look at this floor plan of this house, and if there is, let's assume this white thing is a couch, and if a person sits at this point always, so he's sitting on crossing of many lines. Or if a person is sitting at a crossing of a Benker and a curry zone. So the person whose house I went to measure, there were two Benker lines and one curry zone crossing, and the cancer developed there very fast within few months. So the more the line and the faster you get sick. The same way, the curry also has horizontal planes. And it is so basically there's two cubes overlapping in any given house. So if you take a container and you make holes in it, and if you imagine that the water is the life force energy, and you keep doing nutrition, you do sound, you do meditation, you do nutrition, if the holes are closed, the bucket will be full and you will be healthy. But if the grid lines are not fixed, it's like these holes in your body. And no matter how much nutrition you do, no matter how much meditation you do, it'll have some effect because it's still filling up, but you won't be able to get the health and the mental peace that you are requiring. And I will fix the dirty electricity, I will fix the radiation, and I will fix the earth grids. You look at the center of this healing vibration, there's a very special frequency, which is called the BG3 energy, or which is the vibration of gold. Now, this frequency, you cannot overdo it. Meaning you cannot give them, like you can give too much violet or you can give too much red. But when you give this gold or the BG3 energy, whatever is needed, it will fill up and you can never overdo it. When we are working with biogeometry, the main thing I'm doing when I'm going to somebody's house is I'm filling that house with this frequency of gold, so that whatever the deficiency is, whether it is electromagnetic radiation, whether it is chemical disturbance from the VOCs, whether it is geopathic stress, this living frequency is the energy of the divine plane. So when we look at the levels of energy in a human being, the spiritual level, the spiritual plane, which is the highest source of the divine energy, gold. So when we see masters, we see this golden halo around them. That's the energy that they have, the BG3 energy. So that BG3 energy is the energy of the spiritual 3 plane or the divine plane. And when I fill the house with that energy, it will cover up all these deficiencies, whether it is animate, whether it is inanimate. So the plants will thrive, the people will thrive. Just to give you some proof, that, hey, this actually works. So Japanese scientist Masaru Emoto, who worked with water crystals. So he would take water and crystallize it and see it under a microscope. So he would, if somebody, yelled curses to the water, and then you took a microscopic image, the water crystal didn't have any shape. It was like blobs. Versus if you said prayer or blessings or you did healing on the water and then took the image, it showed very beautiful crystalline images. So Dr. Karim and Dr. Emoto worked together. So these are the images that are taken with a room that has BG3 energy. So this is what standard water looks like. And then the water glass kept in a house which has that BG3 energy creates such beautiful crystals. Here's another example. So they did this experiment. They did many projects. So this is in an apple orchard in Holland. They had the orchard divided in two parts. So one part of the orchard, they didn't give any fertilizer, no chemicals, nothing. No sprays, no pesticides, no herbicides. Only they put this BG3 energy in the trees and in the ground. And the rest of the orchard was regular. Like they did the fertilizers, they did the pesticides and whatever. So the first thing they noticed was that in this biogeometry apple orchard, there was no bugs or there were no worms that came on the apples. So the apples grew without pesticides. Second, when the apples grew, they were very juicy and big. So they did an experiment. They took biogeometry apples and the regular apples and left it for 1 month. At the end of 1 month, the BG3 apples are still healthy because they are so strong with life force. And these are regular apples. On day one, they both look the same, but these have rotted. So think about it. If you and I or children are in a house with this BG3 energy, the apartment, and just to show you some more images. So in this area, on the left side, I had not done BG3 in the whole house. There's a Benker grid line going through this part shown by these yellow lines. And only on that grid line, I had put some BG3 energy. So you can see the rest of the area is dark, but the grid line, which should have been dark, is now lighter colors and brighter colors and a little bit more healing than the rest of the house. Now, this was the first step. Now, the second step, I filled the room with BG3. So you can see that you start to see more living colors of gold and green and orange, and it's lighter and brighter. When we go to somebody's house, we will find these grid lines, or we will find a source of electromagnetic radiation, or we will find a chemical disturbance, and we'll start to put BG3 energy. So for example, if there's a grid line, I put BG3 energy on the bed, so you see a little bubble of gold. Over here, maybe on the door, I added some BG3 energy and I made a bubble of gold. This is the first step where you're creating little healing bubbles in a house. But my objective is many things are going to come in the house and go. I need the whole house to have that big bubble. We keep getting those bubbles bigger and stronger and bigger and stronger so that at some point they overlap each other. And at one point, they all connect and create this whole bubble for the whole house. That way, inside that house, whether there is electromagnetic radiation, whether there is a grid line, whether there is a chemical toxic stuff, whether there is water, everything gets bombarded with this BG3. And that means the whole house is in a healing bubble now. Now, what that does is that it makes that entire part of the earth living and alive. Okay, so the house becomes this living system which is balancing anything toxic coming in their environment. So that is our objective.